Hello and welcome to our second presentation for the HUBZone Small Business Summit. We have a real treat for all of you today. We have Stephanie Lewis, who is the acting subcontracting manager for the Small Business Administration. So thank you so much for joining us today here, Stephanie. I've heard amazing things about you. I'm not sure you know about this, but you're kind of a big deal. There's been a lot of primes that have said wonderful things about your. It's actually the reason why I reached out and was excited that Diane Dempsey specifically said you need to get Stephanie to do a presentation for your event. So all of you attendees, keep your eyes and ears open because you're probably going to get a lot of great stuff during this presentation. Now, this presentation is going to be recorded. So if you have any questions, feel free to utilize the chat box. We'll be monitoring it throughout the presentation, and Stephanie will, provide you with feedback. So without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Stephanie, and I will, talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle said, my name is Stephanie Lewis. Right now, I'm in an acting position as the National Subcontracting Program Manager. I've been with SBA for 30 years. And the subcontracting program at SBA is one where we focus on getting opportunities under federal contracts that are subcontracts. So we're talking about contracts with the large prime contractors, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop, Lockheed, those types of companies, which are well-known DoD contractors, but also lesser known companies like the airlines and like pharmaceutical companies and other companies that are providing products that are commercial to the federal government. So there's about 6,000 federal contracts issued every year that have small business subcontracting plans. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. And that is the program that we focus on, is getting small businesses opportunities under those small business subcontracting plans. Today, we're going to talk about, first, we're going to meet the people that we have in the field. They're called commercial market representatives. They run SBA subcontracting program. And as the program manager, I just create the infrastructure for which they work under. We're going to talk about what the roles are of those CMRs in the field and how you can utilize them and access them. And then we're going to explain how to locate subcontracting opportunities. These are our folks. These are our commercial market representatives out in the field. In Area 1, we have 4 individuals: Christopher Sau, Jean Spillane, Melinda Chen, and Sandy Liu. And they cover the states listed there under the Area 1. So if you are located in one of those states and you have a question with regards to subcontracting opportunities with a prime contractor located in one of those states, those are the individuals that you would directly contact. In Area 2, we currently have a vacancy, but you can defer to one of the Area 1 CMRs to ask questions about that. They're temporarily covering that area. In Area 3, we have Arnett Mayhew and Gary Hurd. In Area 4, we have Deborah Crumity. In Area 5, we have Sophia Chow, and that's the area that I'm located in. I'm located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but currently in this position, I work for Washington, D.C. But Sophia is the individual that maintains the 11 states there in Area 5. And then we have Janice Nietes covering the West Coast, and she's located out in California. CMRs have a lot of customers. We interact with all the different pieces of the subcontracting program. First and foremost, we interact with the large business federal prime contractors. We use the term large business, but what it actually means is companies that are other than small. So at SBA, we have 2 categories of businesses. We have small businesses that we assist, like yourselves, and then we have other than small businesses. And that's everyone else. And that's companies that are have exceeded the size standard, or companies that are government entities like city, state, and local, or colleges or universities, or nonprofit companies. Those all fit into the other than small bucket. And so those are companies that we would put into the prime contractor bucket. We work with small businesses, including, of course, HUBZone firms and 8A firms, and we have the 8A SBA program. We interact with SBA staff because we're all working together to cooperatively find opportunities for small businesses, and we work really closely with our resource partners, and we'll talk a little bit later about how they can play a part in your finding subcontracting opportunities as well, in particular the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, the PTACs. And then we work closely also with the federal procuring agencies, because of course that's the first layer where the government issues a prime contract to a prime contractor, and then the layer we're getting involved in is the next tier, which is the subcontracting. The way this works is any federal contract that exceeds $750,000 in total, or 1.5 million if it's a construction contract, that's awarded to an other than small business must have something in that contract called a small business subcontracting plan if they're planning to subcontract at all. And that plan has goals for small businesses, women-owned small businesses, small disadvantaged businesses, SBA certified HUBZone small businesses, veteran-owned small businesses, and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Each prime contractor is actively seeking businesses in each of these groups to meet goals that are established with the federal agency in their subcontracting plan. And those goals vary depending on the type of work and the available small business subcontractor pool to accomplish that work. In DoD contracts, prime contractors can also include in the small business goal nonprofit agencies that are organized for the NIBNISH, the National Institute for the Blind and the Severely Handicapped. And it also includes awards to ANCs or Indian tribes, regardless of whether they're actually certified as small businesses. Those ANCs and Indian tribes are counted as small and SDB. And for VA contracts, in order for the prime contractor to count a company as a veteran or a service disabled veteran, they have to be listed in the VA's vendor information pages. Prime contractors can count companies towards these goals in all the goals that they're representing. And so, for instance, if you are a HUBZone veteran-owned small business, then the prime contractor counts the award to you. So if they awarded you a $10,000 subcontract, they would count that $10,000 towards their small business goal, their HUBZone goal, and their veteran-owned small business goal. Companies in all of these categories are what we call self-certifying, except for the HUBZone. The HUBZone companies have to be SBA certified, but in all the other categories, the companies are simply self-representing to the prime contractor their size and socioeconomic status. This includes women-owned, which is there is a certification program out there for women-owned small businesses, but it does not apply to the federal subcontracting program. That is a self-certification category in subcontracting. So the prime contractors have these 6 goals that they're actively trying to meet. And these goals are outlined in their plan and a part of their contract award document. The subcontracting plan, of course, has a lot of other contents. It talks about all the things that all the actions and efforts the contractor is going to take in order to achieve these goals, and to what we call provide maximum practical opportunity to small businesses to participate as subcontractors. This includes a description of the types of supplies and services that they're going to be subcontracting, the method that they're using to identify potential sources, such as their internal source lists, SAM, veteran service organizations, the National Minority Purchasing Councils, the Minority Business Development Agency, the HUBZone Council, and other trade associations. They're going to name an individual at their company who's going to administer this program for them. They often call this person the Small Business Liaison Officer, or the Small Business Diversity Specialist, or the Manager of Diversity Programs, something like that. So if you're Googling on the internet for this individual located at a prime contractor, those might be key terms that you use in your search to find that individual's name and contact information. The contractor is also going to assure the government that they're going to make a good faith effort to acquire the articles and equipment, supplies, and services to perform the contract in the same manner that they propose to the government. So that regulation was added in order to dispel the bait and switch tactics, where sometimes small businesses would be lured in during the proposal phase, and then the prime contractor would use them to glamorize their portfolio, their proposal with, we're going to use all these small businesses, look how great we are, that's why we should get the award. And then come time to perform the contract, they would fail to use these small businesses. And so they have to provide an assurance that they are going to use the contractors in the capacity that they proposed. And they also have to alert the contracting officer throughout the performance of the contract if they deterred from that. They also are going to assure that they are going to pay the small business subcontractors on time and in accordance with the terms and conditions of the underlying subcontract. Again, if they do not pay on time, they are required to notify the contracting officer that they have not paid a small business subcontractor on time and the reasons why. Those are, of course, just a few of there's 15 bullets that are in every subcontracting plan. This is 5 of those. And so there's other bullets in there that also work with the prime contractor to develop how they're going to implement their small business subcontracting program and achieve the goals that are outlined in their plan. And you can find those, if you would like to read those, at FAR 52-219-9. Let's talk a little bit about how then we have these small business subcontracting plans out there, and then we have SBA's commercial market representatives. Like, how do they mesh together? Well, SBA's commercial market representatives are charged with overseeing prime contractors' compliance with their plan and their goals. And so what they do is they conduct periodic reviews to determine whether prime contractors are in compliance with their small business subcontracting plans. And we have both cursory type reviews that are done at the CMR's desk, where they just go in the system, the ESRS system, where the prime contractors report their achievements, and marry that up against their goals and determine how they're doing on their goals, and then write a letter to the company with regards to how they're doing on their goal accomplishment. They do those routinely and frequently, and we did over 250 of those so far in fiscal year 20. We also have very thorough multi-day reviews where we go out to a prime contractor's facility when we're able to and we're not in a pandemic, but and we are doing it virtually now, where we go from top to bottom through the company's small business subcontracting program and ensure that they are meeting all of the 15 elements that they have promised to do in their small business subcontracting plan. And then they get, of course, a grade, and they get recommendations and findings for which they must develop a corrective action plan to fix. The subcontracting plan is an agreement between the agency and the prime contractor. So SBA's oversight is an independent agency oversight, where we're providing outside evaluation of their ability and commitment to achieve their goals and fulfill the requirements of the subcontracting plan. But don't forget that it's also the contracting activities responsibility to monitor that plan and the accomplishments under that plan, and to address any failure to achieve goals under that plan. What else are CMRs doing? They're actively monitoring a mailbox we have called subcontracting@sba.gov, and they rotate monitoring that email on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, so that you can receive timely answers to any subcontracting question that you have that you want to pose to SBA, whether it's understanding a certain regulation, identifying prime contractors in your area, etc. You can use that email box to get your questions answered. They also provide education and training to agencies on understanding subcontracting plans, to large business prime contractors on understanding their requirements to fulfill all the 15 elements in their subcontracting plan. And then we do also provide training like this, which is to small businesses on how to get federal subcontracts. You can also find a listing of the directory of CMRs, those individuals that I just introduced to you on the previous slides, at our website at that link there. They're called commercial market representatives. So that's what our CMRs are busy all year doing to encourage prime contractors to utilize small businesses as subcontractors. how can you find subcontracting opportunities? This is a little bit more of a mystery than when you're doing business with the federal government, which you can just look in, Fed Biz Ops for subcontracting opportunities. Because prime contractors buy in a lot of different ways and fashions, and it's more elusive on how to find those subcontracting opportunities. So these are the tactics that SBA recommends. We are working with the federal agencies, and I intend to work with them quite extensively in fiscal year 22 on publicizing directories of the prime contractors that have federal subcontracting plans at their agencies. I also plan to work with them closely on the goal accomplishment of those subcontracting plans at their agencies. But some of them are up to speed already. You will find at a lot of federal agencies' websites, you can find a listing of the prime contractors that they have subcontracting plans, and there will be the point of contact information. And that's usually the individual that I spoke of earlier, called the Small Business Liaisons Officer of the individual that is administering the subcontracting plan. You can often find these on the agency's website or the OSDBU's website. The OSDBU is a DoD term called the Office of Small Business Development and Utilization. And often on their website, they'll have a listing of their prime contractors. So that's one place that you can go to immediately find a listing of contractors that you can contact about subcontracting opportunities. You can also research prime contracts that are recently awarded in SAM.gov. When you do this, you've got to realize, though, that subcontracting plans are set up in the proposal stage. So in a lot of instances, the prime contractors have already found their small businesses that they're planning to use for the execution of their contract prior to you seeing them there posted as an awardee. So it is important that you identify prime contractors and talk with them about upcoming opportunities that they have that they're bidding on, for which you can be involved in as a potential subcontractor should they win the award. But the listing of prime contracts awarded is also useful in that prime contractors are continuously looking for small business subcontractors to fulfill their contracts, even throughout performance. And this is particularly true for companies that are commercial in nature. They are continuously, a commercial company subcontracting plan involves not only what they're providing to the government, but also what they're providing commercially. So their plan covers everything that they're purchasing to run their company. And so there's a wide opportunity for you with commercial companies. And of course, those types of companies are just continuously looking for small businesses. And just to focus on the HUBZone program for a minute, the HUBZone program is an identifiable group of companies for which are clearly found in the dynamic small business search that they can look for to fulfill their HUBZone goal. It's like no other in that when we do reviews out at prime contractors, we will hear them say, I pulled up all the HUBZone companies in my state, and I went through them one by one to see if I could use that company in some way at my company. Because I'm not going to lie to you that HUBZone is a difficult goal for them to make because the pool is smaller and you have to be certified. And so they struggle more in meeting their HUBZone goals. Whereas if it was like women-owned small businesses or veteran-owned small businesses, those companies don't have to be certified, and there's many places they can look for those types of companies. But for HUBZones, it's just those that are certified. So do know that your presence in the dynamic small business search is very important, and your profile is very important, because whether you like to believe it or not, you are prejudged by your dynamic small business search profile. As they go through the HUBZone firms looking for those that they could possibly use as subcontractors, you're judged right at that point when your profile is looked at. And that's primarily what they look at. And they're going to zero in on things like your keywords, your NAICS codes, where you're located, your licenses, your customer references, to kind of pre-qualify you to see if there's a potential for them to do business with you. So make sure that you're keeping your DSBS profile as sharp as it can be. Also, The PTACs, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, those are our resource partners. They do wonderful counseling with regards to government contracting. SBA government contracting is not set up to do extensive counseling with small businesses. That's not our mission. As you can see in the previous slides, our mission is a little bit different. We're into the compliance. We're into going to the primes to making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be. We have our subcontracting@sba.gov email address where we can answer questions and provide you guidance to get resources, but we don't really do the sit down counseling with you of, finding companies, looking on websites, etc. That is done through the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and those are often provide free counseling. This is an area that they're very savvy in, government contracting, and a lot of them offer low cost bid matching service. And a workshop that I have found that they offer that I find particularly useful is something called data mining workshop. And this workshop is one where they teach you how to use the internet to find subcontracting opportunities that are currently live for you to immediately get involved in. And of course, they also offer some matchmaking events here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Our Cross Timbers Procurement Technical Assistance Center is excellent, and it works with the prime contractors and has industry days where they just match companies directly with the prime contractor and get those meetings established and introductions, and so that you can start talking about potential subcontracting opportunities immediately with those prime contractors. SBA also has a database called Subnet. And what Subnet is, it's a posting site where prime contractors can go on and post a current opportunity that they have, a live opportunity for a subcontract. And this website is heavily used just naturally, not something that we guided, by the construction industry. But we do encourage all prime contractors to post subcontracting opportunities in this website. It's free. All you have to do is go in there, and there's some parameters you can put on to narrow the search to curtail it for your business. And then, of course, we encourage you to attend procurement trade fairs. Not now, of course, with the pandemic, but procurement trade fairs are put on all across the country by different trade groups and minority associations, and SBA often piggybacks or joins in those, where we provide workshops and counseling at tables. And honestly, there is not another place that you can walk around in one day and meet 100 prime contractors face to face and talk about their contracting opportunities. It's at these procurement trade fairs where you can really get that access, that inside access, that 10-minute one-on-one talk with 100 prime contractors to become aware of what they're buying, how to get in with their company, what are the qualifications you need to do business with them, etc. And how to find those trade fairs, you can become aware of those through the SBA district office calendars, through the PTACs, through the OSDBU offices, and through local trade associations. Often just by Googling as well. This is the next few slides run through some screenshots of the things that I was just talking about. This one is a screenshot of the Social Security Administration's prime contractor directory on their OSDBU website. So you can see here, they have the prime contractor's name, like for instance, on the first line, or let's just go to the last line, Lockheed Martin Corporation, the contract number, who the point of contact is, and you'll see that they've listed the small business liaison officer, Ms. Gaylor, and then the project title, so what type of contract it is, and this is an IT support services contract. So this is the point of contact that you would need for your initial contact with the company. A lot of times, I would encourage you, if you're doing business with a large prime contractor, while you're on the phone with the small business liaison officer, to say, who's the buyer of this commodity? Try to drill down and get the buyer's name at that company so that your secondary conversation with the company can be with the buyer that buys that commodity, if that's how the company has broken up their purchasing. This next slide is our subnet system that I was talking about earlier. And this is our live posting system of subcontracting opportunities. This is really small, But what you can see is on the left-hand side, the subcontracting number, what company it's with, the place it's going to be performed, when it's approximately going to be starting, its NAICS code, and then a description, and then when it's going to be closing, and the point of contact and their email. So the idea here is that you, if this subnet is sortable. So if you are like here in the El Paso area, you could sort and just find opportunities that are in the El Paso area. If you're a construction contractor and you like to do local work, then it would just sort based on that. And the first line there would be a perfect opportunity for you. It's a site preparation contract in El Paso, and then you could immediately contact Bob Schaeffler and find out more information about that particular subcontract. This is sort of the drill down in Subnet of information. If you had clicked on that solicitation number, you can find out more information. For instance, on this subcontract, they were specifically looking for veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran subcontractors. If you're a HUBZone firm, that doesn't mean that you can't contact them, but their focus for this just happened to be for those veterans. But you can find all kinds of good information here to help you learn about the opportunity. And in this case, on this one, on the left-hand side at the bottom, you can see that they even attach the invitation to bid. PTACs, they normally list a lot of their training sessions right on their websites. So if you are located, let's say in the state of Utah, go ahead and Google Procurement Technical Assistance Center Utah, and you will find the Utah's PTAC. And then you could click on their website to find these training sessions. A lot of them are recorded. You don't even have to wait for them to come about, or you can engage in one that's upcoming. So it can be more interactive for you. But like on this one here, you can see where I've highlighted there the data mining workshop, which would help you to do market research using SAM and other internet tools to find current opportunities. There's a lot of workshops there, and it kind of gives you an idea of what type of workshops and assistance the PTACs can provide you, such as you know, how to do business with DLA, how to do business with FEMA, how to find disaster contracts, etc. And also you can go right to prime contractors' websites, look up their supplier diversity or supplier training section, and they will have posted opportunities on how to do business with them. This Lockheed Martin one follows the course of action that SBA highly recommends. Number one, do your homework with regards to the focus areas. Get to know the company before you contact them. Don't just cold call them and be like, so what does your company do? You know, go and SAM, go to their website, do your research so that you can have a great conversation with them about how you can fit into what you already know that they're providing to the government. And a lot of the large prime contractors, and this might be time consuming, but it is something that you have to endure in order to do business with them. A lot of them have a supplier marketing portal that you must go in and register your company information in. And that does get you in the company's directory, because companies like Lockheed have, you know, 300 buyers down at Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth. And what the buyers look at is the portal. You can't possibly contact 300 buyers, but what they can do is find your information in their portal based on your keyword, your NAICS, your location, your qualifications, your past performance, etc. A lot of the prime contractors will also post their outreach events here. So if you are particularly interested in meeting face-to-face with Lockheed, you could find out where they're going to be and then find them at that procurement session. Tips for prime contractors. Like I talked to you about earlier, prime contractors seek most of their subcontractors prior to submitting their own offer on a federal contract. However, many also continuously seek subcontractors throughout performance of their contracts. When you contact them, first and foremost, please emphasize your company's skills and expertise and what you can do for the company as a subcontractor. Try to have your size and socioeconomic status mentioned secondary, not as your primary selling point. To do business with a prime contractor and for them to get credit for you, you are going to have to self-represent your company and your size status in as a small business and or in any of those other 5 subset groups. And prime contractors can rely upon SAM, but if you've chosen not to get in the SAM database, which you do not have to for subcontracting, you can submit a written size self-certification to the prime contractor declaring your size status. And that is usually on a form that they will provide you. Just remember, to be considered small, the subcontractor has to be small for the NAICS code that the prime contractor has assigned to the subcontract that best describes the work of that subcontract. I know some companies are small in some NAICS codes and not small in others. And so it's important that you know what you're testing to be small for and the NAICS code that the contractor has classified that subcontract. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the prime contractor can count you in all the groups that you can self-represent your status, except for HUBZone, which is SBA certification. Just here on the closing slide, I wanted to just remind you that if you have questions on anything that I've presented today, or you want to reach out and ask a question, please feel free to email subcontracting@sba.gov, and we'll have one of the CMRs respond to your questions. I would like to open it up for questions now.
We do have one question that came in. Cecily asked, is it necessary for small businesses to have federal past performance in order to work with prime contractors?
That's a great question. Primarily because we do recommend that you start out as a subcontractor when you don't have great past performance or any past performance, because on a federal contract, the past performance is much more important. It can be used as an evaluation factor. And in subcontracting, generally we like to think of these as smaller introductory type ways that small businesses can get into the federal government contracting marketplace, but may not quite have the wherewithal to get its own prime contract with the federal government.
All right, well, that sounded like a good answer, but I personally have a question. A lot of times you've noticed with subcontracting, large businesses are required to adhere to subcontracting goals, but there's not a lot of teeth with subcontracting. So what does a small business do when they're on a team and they were supposed to be getting some sort of work share, but then when it comes time, when the money starts getting handed out, nobody's answering the phone? So what kind of suggestion would you give to a small business that's in that situation? Is there any sort of recourse?
Yeah, Michelle, that is a good question. And it's one that we address here at SBA a lot, because we did implement that bait and switch regulation into the federal subcontracting plans. And so basically in the federal subcontracting plan, the prime contractor has promised not to do that. And if they find themselves in a situation where they have a named subcontractor in their proposal and they no longer intend to use that small business, they do have to notify the contracting officer of that. And so they may get some pressure from the contracting officer, and the contracting officer then becomes aware that the small business isn't going to be used. But I do want to caution small businesses that a lot of contracts are what we call IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. So when prime contractors bid on them, they aren't quite sure the type and amount of work that they're going to get in specific trades under that contract. So while the small business may have been involved in the proposal phase, like let's say it's a construction or engineering contract, and they had engaged a small business for the geothermal engineering portion. And so the small business, of course, was hopeful to get work under that contract. But in fact, the prime contractor never received any task orders that involved that trade. And so there may be some hurt feelings with the small business thinking that they, were used in the proposal, but not getting the work, where the prime contractor actually just never received a task order that required that. And so we have to be a little bit careful when we're using that. So what I would recommend to the small business is that they first call the prime contractor and have a conversation, either with the contracting officer for that the the subcontract manager for that contract, or with the small business liaison officer, and try to get an idea of what's going on with the contract and why you may have not been contacted to be utilized as a subcontractor. But if you kind of get the brush off, or you get the idea that the contractor went with a large business and they had basically said that they were going to use a small business to fulfill this trade, then you can always reach out to the contracting officer. And I also encourage you to reach out to your commercial market representative to get advice on how to handle it. We can then call and put a little pressure on the prime contractor and ask them for an explanation as well. Of course, we're an outside agency. Our grip and our turn of our wrist is just only so much, but we do these compliance reviews, and that's something that if we get continuous complaints about a prime contractor, we may target that prime contractor for an upcoming review that year to look into their policies and procedures and bring that up with the company's executive management while we're out there.
I love how politely you put that. So she's trying to tell you guys, sometimes whistleblowing isn't always the way to go. Make sure you do your homework first, and that you don't try calling somebody out and not understanding all the facts. We do have a question here that says, are large companies or prime contract small business plans available to the public? And I know you had mentioned it previously with Subnet, but can you highlight a little bit more to like distinguishing factors with IDIQs, and then maybe where they can track if there was a task order done so that they can get their ducks in the row if they do decide to go forward?
Yeah. So the small business subcontracting plan is a part of the contractual document. It is not public information for you to see. So small businesses can't get the small business subcontracting plan and see the goals that they had for certain categories. SBA sees those, as well as the contracting officer monitors those. We monitor those through the electronic subcontract reporting system. So you can have a conversation with SBA. We won't disclose the goals, but we can talk with you about their goals and how you can maybe fit into that company. On a task order contract, you can use FPDS. So the Federal Procurement Data System, fpds.gov. Well, actually, this is now in sam.gov. I have to get more familiar with my terms, but sam.gov under contract opportunities, you can now find all contract awards. And so for task order contracts, orders are also placed in FPDS. So if you're trying to get a handle on what orders the contractor has gotten, you can look up that contract number in sam.gov and find out how many orders have been executed under it.
Well, we have a statement. Marshall, I love the sarcasm and commentary, but technically classifies it hearsay. But Marshall had made a comment in there indicating that sometimes that the companies that the primes select might be intentional with the intent of not being able to justify that they weren't technically acceptable to skirt adhering to subcontracting plans. But again, technically we might all think that happens, but we can't confirm or deny it. One thing I did
Michelle,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you got to believe that may happen in some instances, but I mean, is that really a business you wanted to do business with in the first place? So we do advise that there's a lot of prime contractors out there, thousands of them. So if you find a closed door, move on. There's a lot of opportunities out there with prime contractors. And if you find a company difficult to work with, we're not going to let them go on it on SBA side with regards to their compliance with their subcontracting plan. But we do encourage you to move on when the door is being closed, because a lot of times what happens is sometimes we find these longer term contracts or subcontracting agreements out there. So a prime contractor may have a 3-year contract for office supplies or something like that. So really there isn't an opportunity for you at that company for a 3-year period. And sometimes that's what they're trying to tell you is, we have a supplier for this right now. We're not going to be entertaining other subcontractors in this trade for a period of time. You need to move on for that 3-year period. If you're just standing there waiting for a 3-year period, you're wasting time that you could find in another prime contractor. So The question for that prime contractor is, when is the opportunity coming up to bid again for this trade? And then mark it on your calendar. So, 2.5 years from now, you go back to that prime and you say, hey, I remember, this office supply contract is coming up for bid. Please put me on the bidders list. It's been, I've been waiting around for it, and I really look forward to the opportunity. But the time in between, you didn't waste just thinking that this prime contractor wasn't being, having an open door and open heart to doing business with your business.
So you made a comment earlier in the presentation, is that some of these larger businesses might be better to work with. And I'm always a firm believer in positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. Is there anything that the SBA is thinking about, maybe, highlighting some of these primes that are doing an amazing job? Because maybe it'll also incentivize some of these ones that might not be really the top notch to try to follow in suit. And then it'll also kind of provide a pathway to some small businesses to know, like, hey, maybe these are some businesses that you should look at working with, and like diversifying. Has there been any discussion about that?
Yeah, I have two trains of thought on that. So the Department of Defense is obviously the biggest contractor, and there are 9 companies that participate in something called the Comprehensive Subcontracting Plan. And that's a special type of subcontracting plan that they have that encompasses all their DoD contracts. And it's a single plan. So they're not doing plans per contract like a lot of contractors. They have a single plan that's monitored by the Defense Contract Management Agency. You can find a list of these 9 contractors on the DoD OSDBU's website. And, they are the big DoD prime contractors. They have robust programs. They're very professional. They will have tools. Everything's established and ready for you to find out about opportunities and whether there really is an opportunity at that company. They're polished programs. They're heavily monitored. And so I would encourage you to seek those out. That's a very easy catch. Just go to those 9 companies and make your contact, right? But where we have found also the largest opportunity is at the smallest prime contractors, the companies no one's heard of, the companies where they only have 1 or 2 subcontracting plans. They are actively and aggressively finding subcontractors and suppliers. So they present a very big market for you because their supplier base hasn't been saturated with small businesses and socioeconomic small businesses to where they are already performing all their contracts. And so I would encourage you also to focus on the company names that you haven't heard of that might be in your area that you can form a relationship with. And the way that you can find those is probably on the directories that are posted on the federal agencies' websites.
I love that recommendation. Or, reverse engineer, figure out where the contract awards are using the tools like FPDS. I personally like USA Spending because I'm a very visual person. So you can always identify the agencies that you are targeting, export the information, and try to figure out who got those contract awards. If they are a large business and it was awarded an open competition, odds are that they have a subcontracting plan. So, sometimes it's work backwards. It's not always about what hasn't come out, but don't forget what's already been awarded. But we are coming towards the end of this. So do we have any last minute questions from anybody that we want to, before we lose Stephanie, because this has been absolutely amazing. The one is, we realize SBA is working towards stricter compliance to follow up. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm saying that out loud. What leverage does SBA have for non-compliance? So as I was reading that out loud, is obviously we know subcontracting enforcement across the board is, it's an issue. But there's no statutory authority. Anything going on your guys' end on trying to get some teeth?
Well, yes, actually, we are looking and working aggressively to put more teeth into what we call liquidated damages. We have some proposals that we're working on to strengthen and tighten that down. Liquidated damages is something that is imposed by the contracting officer. And so the way that this works is that SBA, through our observation and our reviews, if we come across prime contractors that are not in compliance with their subcontracting plans, the contracting officers get copies of that compliance review report. And then, of course, they can annotate in the contractor's CPARs, or they can choose to impose liquidated damages on the contractor as well, using the data that's in our extensive report. But yeah, we are looking at a lot of ways. The penalties is something that we hear a lot, and that the public feels that they are not imposed enough. And so that's something that SBA is working with the councils that write the regulations to tighten.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and I appreciate you keeping up that fight. And I apologize for me looking back and forth because I'm multitasking over here. So this was a lot of amazing information, and I really hope that everybody, kind of thinks this over because this is going to be a topic that we're constantly discussing. And if you have any suggestions or feedback in regarding how to improve subcontracting, feel free to shoot an email to the HUBZone Council, because we will be compiling comments and feedback over the next month in order to provide them to individuals and the policymakers like Stephanie. So obviously they always have an open door policy, but we want to avoid inundating them, because the more we flood them with emails, the less they can do things to try to make a real difference. So again, I thank you so much for taking the time to participate today. This is wonderful. And I encourage everybody, here in about 15 minutes, we are going to go into a live panel with SBA HUBZone representatives to discuss key issues impacting the HUBZone program for initial applications, recertifications, and some of the rule changes. So I hope all of you guys have your thinking caps on, because this is the time for you to get your questions answered. And with that said, I will like to say thank you again, Stephanie, and I think that we're wrapping up.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thanks, Michelle.
Bye, guys. See you in a couple minutes.